Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting little knife right here. This is the Spyderco Knives Drunken. Very interesting piece here, but first off, in the name of full disclosure, I gotta thank Spyderco for sending this guy along. They have given this guy to me as a review sample in exchange. I just have to find something charitable to do with it afterwards. That's easy peasy, win-win for me. So I'm happy to do that, but we have to assume, though, that this is the best quality controlled one of these ever. I've also done my best not to let that affect my review, and as always, I told them I'd talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk, and they still sent it along. So thanks, Spyderco, but full disclosure there, that is. Next thing, size comparison. Here it is against your Spyderco Delica. Ontario Rat number 2. And your rat number 1. So you can see here, this is not a tiny knife by any stretch of the imagination. It is actually sizably larger than your Delica here. The blade is non-trivial, etc. And actually, maybe the most relevant size comparison, and frankly, comparison is against this guy right here. This is the Spyderco Spidey Shaft, which feels in a lot of ways like a similar knife, although they are very different in other ways. So there we go. We'll keep coming back to that one. Next thing, this guy is a design by Dmitriy Sinkevitch. I have shown his stuff off a fair amount on the channel. In fact, I would go so far as to say he is among my favorite knife designers. He does some really, really excellent work. And so it's really nice to see. I think this might be his first collaboration with Spyderco. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but at the very least, there aren't many of them. So that's great to see. I love seeing him working with Spyderco. That's good. And then finally, a quick note, this is made by the Taichung, Taiwan factory out of Spyderco, which is a very, very good factory from them. And if you're looking for the disassembly video, that was actually posted way back when I first got the knife. I did that same thing where I did my disassembly and first impressions right off the bat. So, anyways, there you go. Let's go ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting little knife right here. So on the good side, to start with, I'm loving seeing Sinkevitch working with Spyderco. I mean, seeing versions of his designs that cut beautifully is just great to me. Spyderco makes great tools. Sinkevitch makes great designs. This union, there's a great deal, goodness coming out of that potentially. Next thing, the size on this is absolutely solid. Let me do a quick blade length measurement for you real quick. Coming in here, right in that kind of 3.3-ish range here. It's a good blade size here. Not going to be too big for most legalities. Legalities, yeah, that's a word now, sure. But that's nice. Next thing, this guy actually came in a leather case rather than the conventional Spyderco case. And I don't have that here with me handy, which is kind of another reason I'm not a brilliant man. But hey, whatever it is, it comes with a nice little case there instead of the conventional Spyderco box. Kind of a neat little trick. Well, not a big deal, but it's a thing. Next thing, this guy has a very nice lanyard hole, meaning that it is barely there. It is unobtrusive. You notice the lanyard hole if you're looking carefully for a lanyard hole, but otherwise you don't really, and that's always a nice thing. It doesn't really affect the ergonomics. It doesn't affect the clip placement. It doesn't affect anything. That's a nice way to do a lanyard hole, so that's good. Next thing, the blue accents on this guy are very nice, because it's mostly carbon fiber here, but you've got this little bit of blue here. You've got the blue backspacer here, which is pretty nice. And then this little blue here, and then the clip, of course. I think I already showed that one off. But anyways, you can see here that you've got sort of this three-tone sort of thing. You got your carbon fiber, you got your gray titanium, you got your blue there, and then your reflective blade. So there you go. Next thing, this guy is beautifully made. We'll talk more about the machining in a bit here, but just overall fit and finishes, tolerances, everything is just really on point. The Spyderco Taichung factory is doing, if not their best work, is right at the top, and they are really, really, really good, and this is a good demonstration piece from them. This is them flexing a little bit, and that's great to see. I very, very much appreciate that. By the way, internal lock bar insert there, which is nice. It's not, you can't really see it from the outside, but it's got over travel stop, all of those things. Very, very nice there. Next thing, this is a lightweight knife. Although it's not tiny, and it actually has a full liner on the inside as well, underneath the carbon fiber. We're coming in here around 3.77 ounces. It's over an ounce an inch, but at the same time, it feels very light. And a big part of that is due to this heavy internal milling on the inside there that we'll talk about a little bit later that you saw during the disassembly. So the lightness of this guy, let me put it this way. The number itself isn't all that light, but it feels very light in the hand. So I do appreciate that very much. Next thing, the action on this is great. This is a knife that is running on washers, on phosphor bronze washers, but it is absurdly smooth. It is very, very smooth. It's a different sort of, it's not that same hydraulic-y feeling that you get off of a Shabazz, but it is just deeply, deeply smooth. It is as smooth as some of the other classics from Spyderco, like the Spyderco Sleege Bowie is one of their just like, oh my God, this is nicely done. It has that same feeling of just, oh my God, glassy smoothness. I love seeing that action, and it's great. I mean, originally, I for some reason, at one point, I thought this was going to be on washers. I'm actually glad, or on bearings, that is. I'm glad they did washers. That's nice. And then finally, on the good side, and something that could be the great, is the blade of this guy. This is a very, very nice blade. I mean, to start with, it is a very thin edge. You can see here if we scroll down there, wrong metaphor. If we look down at the bottom there, you can see just how thin this guy gets at the bottom there. And then the steel on this guy is CPM S90V. And S90V is a very nice steel. It is a super steel by any definition. And so I like this blade a lot. But the biggest news is that thinness here. This guy cuts like freaking crazy. It is really, really good at cutting things. You know, throwing this guy through cardboard, throwing this through, you know, I did a bunch of cutting with it just because it's really enjoyable. This is a great edge for actually cutting things, and I love seeing that. In addition, you know, on top of that, you get your beautiful mirror finish there. There's just a bunch of joy there. I really like the blade of this knife. The blade is, in many ways, probably my favorite part of the knife. So that's absolutely a beautiful thing, and that to me is the good. It's got a very nice blade, a great action. It is pretty lightweight. It feels very lightweight, even though it's got the full liner under the carbon fiber there. It has a bench of blue accents there, a nice lanyard hole, good fit and finish, comes in a nice case, nice size, and I do love seeing Sinkevitch and Spyderco together. I hope that continues in the future. On the great side to me is the machining in this. I kind of showed this off in the preview video, but I'm just going to slowly kind of move this in front of the camera, and what you'll see here is that that's not the carbon fiber pattern. This is just a pretty vanilla carbon fiber here, but what they've done here is they've milled in huge amounts of grooving to it, and depending on the angle that you're seeing, you get little shadows, and that's just very nice. Then you flip it over, and then you see that that same milling pattern has been put into the titanium all throughout it. That's kind of cool looking. Does it matter in the grand scheme of things? Is this necessary? No. Is it winning you much? Maybe a little bit of traction, but it's just showing off. And you know what? It's kind of cool. It is a very neat little pattern, and you can see why they call it the Drunken, with that machining pattern there. Definitely looks a little bit drunk. So, and then not to mention, underneath there, you've got all of this beautiful the skeletonization that you can see in the disassembly. I mean, this is just a knife that has been machined like crazy. They have spent a lot of time, very clearly, in making sure that the machining is good to go, and it really does show. So, to me, what's great here is that machining. Both the surface cosmetic stuff and the internal milling, and frankly, the blade on this is just a beautifully machined piece of art. So, to me, at least, that's what's great. The machining. On the bad side, and one thing I'll say to start with is that the design on this guy is not, you know, completely groundbreaking. It's not sort of out of left field. You know, in many ways, it feels like the Spidey Chef and the ZT456 had a baby, and this is kind of what fell out. You know, it's a little thing, but at some level, and then, by the way, the 456 is by Sinkevitch. Same designer, so that's no shock there. But still, you know, it's not something that's completely out of left field. Not a big deal, but it's a situation. Next thing, this guy is not really super Spidey flickable. I have relatively small hands and fingers, so I can kind of get a finger in there and do it, but I imagine for most people that's not going to be possible just because the lock bar is covering up a large part of the Spidey hole there. That's not going to be great for a lot of folks. It's also not a lefty-friendly knife at all. In addition to the fact that the clip is on one side only, you also just have this covering the lock bar. I mean, so you've just knocked out the Spidey flickers and the lefties all at once. Not a huge deal, at least for a decent part of the population, but at the same time, yeah, that's a decision. Next thing, ergonomically speaking, this guy feels like it was designed for the eye rather than for the hand. It's not bad. I mean, ergonomically it works, and after a while I kind of found the grip that works well with it. And actually rebending the clip helped me a little bit with that too. But you get areas like, for instance, this little prominence down here that just never does quite feel good in my hand. You've got this little area here with the lock bar here is, because of the lock bar insert, it is actually about 50%. I'm not concerned by the lockup particularly at all. I think a good middle to high lockup is not a problem. But at the same time, the lock bar being that far over makes this a little bit of a prominence, as well as the clip. This just this isn't the most ergonomic knife Spyderco's put out. And compared even to, like, the Spidey Chef, which to me feels more ergonomic in the hand, I don't know. Not a big fan of the ergos on this guy. Next thing, this guy has the external lock bar relief. Now, I get it. I mean, that may be a thing that they had to do just for, you know, they've got all the internal milling and whatnot. I'm not a knife maker, I don't know. But unfortunately, combined with this clip here that we'll talk about later on, that ends up being, there's a whole bunch of topography right here for your pocket to go over. So that's a thing. And then finally on the bad side, the price on this guy is definitely up there. This is a $410 knife. Now, mind you, when you first see this in pictures, if you're looking at this from across the room, you're like, $410 for that? A lot of people had that opinion. The thing is, though, then you spend some time with the knife actually in hand, and you feel the things that are a little bit more subtle. God, I sound pretentious, but they are. You see this machining in person. You see the amount of detail that went into it, and frankly, the excellence with which it's been done. You feel the smoothness of the pivot. You see the carbon fiber up close, and it really does make a lot more sense. I think this is actually a knife that would be, you know, it's definitely, you can charge $410 for this. I don't feel like it's a waste of money. I don't feel like it's an overpriced knife, particularly. But it is still a bunch of money, and everything else needs to be exactly on point when you're charging that much money for any knife. I mean, $400 is in the highest echelons of production knife making. So that's definitely something that's going to be prohibitive for a lot of people, even if I don't actually think it's a bad price for this. So to me, that's what's bad here, is the price is, it's definitely up there. It's got this external lock bar relief, which adds some extra topography around this area. I don't love the bend in the handle, and frankly, the ergonomics on it generally are not very good for me. Very good? They're just not very good for me. It is not Spidey flickable, it's not lefty friendly, and the design does feel a little bit like we've seen it before, but with some modifications. On the ugly front to me, unfortunately, there is one ugly issue here, and that is entirely this clip. So, this, by the way, is not the way that the clip came from the factory. I ended up rebending this clip to try and make it better, but out of the box, this was just bad. I mean, design-wise, it looks great. It definitely fits the overall design aesthetic of the knife, you know, kind of mirroring this thing from the, but in terms of actually clipping in the pocket, it was bad. It was very low profile. It was very thin, you know, very down low, close to the body of the knife, to the extent where we're just wearing normal pants. You know, the knife, the pants material, that is, was getting caught like here and was stopping. So you would have this much of the knife hanging out of your pocket, and you've got very little securing in it, and just not great. And unfortunately, because it's also over this external lock bar relief, that was another area that the pants would snag on. They would get down to this point, but they wouldn't go further up under the clip. And then coupling with that is the non-standard hole pattern on this guy. This is using something that does not look like any other Spyderco clip I've ever seen before, and therefore we can probably guess this is a one-off sort of thing. If it were a standard Spyderco clip, I could just swap in, for instance, or if it were a wire clip, I could swap in a different length wire or something like that to make things easier. But unfortunately, you can't do that here. And so I was able to remove this clip. Well, of course I was able to remove it. It's just one screw. But I removed this clip and I actually rebent it. I rebent it in such a way to basically sort of create additional height. You know, I took it from being very flat to a little bit more bowed. So there's a little bit more room underneath there for your pants pocket material, and that actually improved it markedly. I also tweaked the tension a little bit here, and I just did this at home with hand tools there. That's not something I should have to do with a knife this high-end, but, you know, it's definitely a factor. And once I did that, it got a lot better. I was able to get this all the way down into the pants, etc., and it also happened to smooth out another issue with this clip, which is the tip of the clip kind of being angled upwards. There's a reason that in most Spyderco clips, or frankly most clips in general, most good ones, there's sort of an area at the end of the clip that's flattened out. This just makes it more ergonomic. It means it's not poking up into your hand. And so when I did that kind of arching of the clip, it actually lowered this part, which gives you less ramp, but it gives you less poke into the hand too. So the clip on this guy was unfortunately just kind of a loss. And I feel like, you know, people complained about the standard clip on the Nirvana, but to me, it's better to have a good functional clip than something that is beautiful, but ultimately flawed. I mean, if you're just fondling the knife, then a high design clip might be the better choice, but for actual everyday carry, this is not ideal. And this knife is definitely waiting for some aftermarket person or Spyderco themselves to come up with a better clip for it. I think that is a really good place for some CQY, continuous quality improvement, in future runs of this model if they're going to keep making them, because the current one, Yeah, not doing so swinging. So, to me at least, that's what's ugly here, is the clip on this knife is just kind of, it's not great. There's no way around that. And that seems to be, of all the people I've talked to who've had one, they all pretty much agree, not a stellar choice. So to me, that's the ugly, this clip. So on the final conclusion front, this knife was actually a very interesting piece for me to kind of tackle and think through as a reviewer, because there were a lot of weird oppositions here. There were a lot of the, it was not straightforward to come to my conclusions, because it feels both outrageously expensive, especially to some people, and completely reasonable. I mean, when this was first announced, a lot of folks were up in arms on the pricing on day one, and actually, so was I. When they first announced this knife with its price tag, I remember looking at the catalog and going, wow, they're going to have to earn that. And I think this is in part because a lot of folks still struggle with the idea of a $400+ production Spyderco. I don't anymore. After handling the Nirvana, after handling this, it's like they can do the work. That's not a concern. But I think the biggest issue is that the price on this guy, like I said, makes a lot more sense in person than in pictures. You handle one of these guys and it's just like, oh, that's why it's $400. Okay, I get it now. And I think it competes with a lot of the same things that are up there in that domain. I mean, in terms of quality of machining and whatnot, this isn't far off of your Chris Reeves and your Hinder. I mean, it's right up there. It's not a bad thing. Because the build quality is high, and I think it's in line with a bunch of things. And frankly, if this guy had a bear on the blade rather than a bug, people would be entering lotteries to pay $1,100 for it. You're going to try and argue with me, but it's true. 100% true. And frankly, this is made just as well, if not better. So I really do feel like this is not a terrible price, but on the surface, it can feel that way. Another opposition here. It feels like it's related to other pieces, particularly the Spidey Chef, but it is also unique. Like I said, looking at these two knives next to each other, there's a big temptation for people to go, well, why would you do this one? Why would you pay more of that? And, so there is that similarity, but it's very different. I mean, compared to the ZT456, this is better made, better size, thinner, and frankly, just for cutting, way better than that ZT. And it is an order of magnitude fancier and more luxurious, if you will, than the Spidey Chef. I think this is a very different knife than both of those very easy comparisons, and as a result, we have to think about it differently. And the final opposition is the exceptionally overdone and underdone level. You have this amazing machining, milling, skeletonization. You've got this beautiful blade grind, this beautiful blade polish, and then you've got that clip, which is a bent piece of metal that doesn't really... So that, there's that one too. And so all of this adds up to a knife that's kind of hard to come to a conclusion on. I mean, at some level, it is one of Spyderco's most technically masterful knives. This great fit and finish, great action, great blade work, amazing machining throughout. I mean, honestly, it is just really Spyderco flexing. At some level, this is really, really good. And it is a good knife in the pocket for carrying and using. Once I got this clip doing a little bit better, it worked absolutely fine. And I did enjoy carrying it on the days that I carried it. Frankly, in terms of luxuriousness, it sort of harkens back to one of my very favorites from Spyderco, the Sleesh Bowie here. I'm sorry, Swish Bowie. I'm trying, people. But anyways, it kind of harkens back in that same feeling of just like quality and excellence, and oh my God, that's a Spyderco? That it's nice to see that recaptured. But it is also quite pricey. Ergonomically, it's not amazing, and big of all, it's got this Achilles heel clip. Achilles hip, there you go. I imagine somebody's going to make a killing selling a great clip for this guy down the road. The question, though, for me, ultimately, is what you're after. If you just want a cutting tool, if you are looking for a knife that you want to use to cut things on a regular basis, this Spidey Chef is probably a better choice for you, because the blade on this guy is just as nice, if not nicer in some ways. I really, really do like LC200N as a steel, and, this has the advantage of being a rust-proof knife, basically, whereas this one doesn't necessarily. And so that can be a better choice. The ergos for me are a little bit better, and it's using one of the very best clips around, and better still, it's about half the price. So the Spidey Chef, I think, for a lot of folks is going to win. But where this guy is going to find a happy home is with people who want the confluence of super fancy and super slicey. This knife is the Cadillac Escalade, if you will, to the Spidey Chef's GMC Yukon. This is a perfectly functional way to go about your day, This is the fancy version. This is the leather seats, heated steering wheel, fancy sound system, TVs in the headrest sort of an approach to this guy. It's the same basic idea, similar profile for the same situations. Both will get you from point A to point B, and from a mile off, they both seem to do it about the same. But this has an air of luxury that the chef doesn't even pretend to touch. This is Spyderco flexing while at the same time producing a functional cutting tool. Yeah, you lose a little bit of raw function, but you'll gain it right back in style. And that functions mostly in clip and ergos and whatnot. So I will end this review in the least satisfying but most true way that I can. There will be a subset of people who are angered by the price or style or other elements of this knife. Hey, guess what? This knife isn't for you. Good job, you figured it out. There are going to be people who are just looking for a good slicey cutting tool. And they don't really care about the luxury elements. They don't need the leather seats. In that case, the Spidey Chef is probably a better choice. You're paying half the price and getting something functionally that's very, very similar. But if you found yourself looking at the Chef, looking at the other Spydercos and thinking, man, I want something that cuts like that, because Spyderco is really good at making knives that cut things, but with a little bit more style, a little bit more pizzazz, then I think it is absolutely 100% time to consider going on a drunken adventure. So there you go. I hope this has been interesting to you and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.